גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים.
Good evening, everyone. The 2022 Federation Annual Meeting will now begin.
Today we are rocked, not shocked, but rocked by the murder of 19 children and 2 adults in Texas. However, today is not the time for us to be consoled. Today is not a time for us to be comforted. Today is the time for the families of those children and adults to be comforted and consoled. Today is the time to provide comfort for the family in the Bronx who is bearing an 11-year-old child, also a victim of gun violence. Tomorrow is the time when we will comfort and console the families of 22 more children who will die by gun violence today, because every single day in this country, 22 children die by gunfire. But I am not calling for a moment of silence today. It was the billions of moments of silence since the last catastrophe that led to the tragedy that we are confronting today. Rather, today is the day to be provoked to act. I want to tell you a story from our Torah. It's a story of the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. We've all heard this story before. God spoke to Abraham, said to him, take your child, your only child, the child you love, and offer him to me as a sacrifice in the place that I will show you. Abraham complied with God's request and binds Isaac upon the altar. As Abraham's knife-wielding hand is about to come down to sacrifice his son, an angel cries out, Abraham, Abraham, stop. Do not go through with this. A question can be asked if it was on the authority of no less than God that Abraham undertook this act, why did God not intervene to stop him? Why did God send an angel to hold back Abraham's hand? I want to share with you a perspective that I have not heard elsewhere, and I hope it is meaningful to you. Through this example, God is saying to Abraham and to all of us, when you see evil, do not wait for me to tell you what to do. When you see evil, confront it. In our Federation work, we often invoke the phrase that people are created, B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. That means that each one of us is created in the image of God. And just as God has the power to discern between good and evil, we have that same power. Just as God has the power to confront and eliminate evil, we have that same power. We share a mission to smother evil. So on this day, when families in Texas are identifying their murdered children through their DNA, we recognize that we have the power to bring more good into the world. This is what we do at Federation, and this is what we do in our community. We did it every day this past year. Let's do it again tomorrow. I want to publicly acknowledge Bob Lichtman, our Chief Jewish Learning Officer, for these powerful words. Bob, thank you. So, good evening, and welcome to the 2022 annual meeting of the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West New Jersey. My name is David Saginaw, and I'm the very proud president of this federation. Tonight, we are gathered here in Conference Center, which we haven't been in a long time, both in person and along with people on Zoom. And as always, we are providing closed captioning for the entirety of this meeting. Given what the world has gone through over the last 24 months, having everyone, all these people in the room tonight is really, really heartwarming for me. It's been a tough 2 years of our relationships only being virtual. So I'm grateful that as we prepare to close the book on another campaign year, we're able to be together in person and on Zoom to reflect on this past year and look forward to what is to come. So Bob Lichtman, who I mentioned before, always gives the devartors at our board meetings, and I asked him tonight if he would defer to me. So Bob, thank you again. In the soundtrack of Jewish memory, this is one of our top 10 hits. You all heard it walking in tonight. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Now, the literal translation of this is how good and how pleasant it is that brothers dwell together. But for tonight, when we translate the word achim, let's use our 21st century ears to say brothers and sisters. This is one of those songs that we tend to sway to. We almost can't help but be drawn to people. We put our arms around them. We feel connected as we sing these words. Actually, I really wanted to lead us in doing it in rounds that we've all grown up doing, but Amy told me we didn't have enough time. This song was composed over 3,000 years ago by King David as the 133rd chapter of Psalms, with the following introduction, a song of ascent. But it is more than a song. It is a blessing that has traveled through time to reach us here in New Jersey tonight. How good and how pleasant it is that brothers dwell together. Jewish legend teaches that the temple was built on the site of two adjoining fields of grain, each one owned by two brothers. The story goes that in the middle of the night, one brother, thinking that the other brother needed help, took his grain and threw it from his field into his brother's. What he did not know was that his brother was thinking and doing exactly the same thing, throwing grain from his field over to him. How good and how pleasant it is that brothers dwell together. But what is pleasant really about? The unpacked meaning of this word is twofold. When we dwell together with a sense of mutual responsibility, that in turn creates the sweetest and most pleasant of relationships among us. I cannot think of a more fitting Torah teaching for an annual meeting than this one that thanks God for finally bringing us here together. Members of the same diverse and beautiful family, aspiring to new success, supporting one another in ways that so many of us don't even know, and doing so from mutual responsibility, motivated by community with a capital C. Regarding community, I would like to acknowledge the Federation Board of Trustees with whom I've worked hand in hand over the past year in the actualization of our mission. You'll hear a little bit more about that later on. I would also like to thank all of you who donated the much needed food items that will be delivered to the Barbro Kosher Food Pantry and the JFS Central New Jersey Food Bank tomorrow morning. And a special thank you to Metro Transport for donating their van so we could pack the truck full of food. By the end of this evening tonight, I hope that you will all feel as inspired as I am about the work of our Jewish Federation over this past year. We begin our program with the Star Spangled Banner led by Cantor Eliana Kistner, Cantor of Hope Shalom congregation. Cantor.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Play ball. How to see if everybody was paying attention. Good evening. I'm Michael Goldberg, your campaign chair, and I'm joined by my most extraordinary successor, Michelle Landau, who is completing her term as Women's Philanthropy President. We are here to provide you with an overall fundraising roundup for the UJA annual campaign. And we're also representing and reporting for our partner and friend, President of the Jewish Community Foundation, Steve Levy, who couldn't be here tonight. His loss. My greatest inspiration in life is my grandfather, who I mention frequently. He taught me the value of peace of mind. Without it, being a happy, productive person cannot be achieved. I was reminded of another important theme when I attended Rabbi Matt Gowitz's 25th anniversary as a rabbi a few weeks ago. Rabbi Matt mentioned that he told his son that his sermons have always been the same each week. So his son replied, "Why do I need to go to temple then?" No, they are not. They are a different story, but leave those listening with the same message of feeling of hope. Peace of mind and hope are quite possibly the greatest gift service we provide to members of our community. When you know where to turn for advice and comfort, you are able to overcome. So it always reminds me of a story that happened to me about 10 years ago when I was sleeping and I woke up in the middle of the night. It was probably about 2 o'clock in the morning and I had a pain in my side. So a little while, my wife woke up and she said, "What's the matter?" I said, "I have a pain in my side." So she said, "Well, go back to sleep. You'll figure it out in the morning." So about an hour later, I was getting very anxious and the pain wasn't going away. When you don't know how to resolve a problem, you get more anxious. And so my wife finally says, "Well, fine, we'll go to the emergency room." And so we get to the emergency room and the nurse is standing there and she said, "How's your pain?" I said, "Well, it's a little better right now." And so my wife, after hitting me, says to me, "Well, why are we here?" And I said, "At home, I was very anxious and I didn't know where to go because the pain was just getting worse. But now that I'm at the hospital, I'm sort of feeling better because I know that help is on the way." So it's sort of how we feel about Federation is you go somewhere and you know that help is on the way and it sort of solves all your problems. It ended up, I did have my gallbladder out, but but I had to say that, when you don't know where to turn, you really become a different person. It's very difficult. And so what positions our Federation to impact the diverse arenas and provide peace of mind at all at once, social services, Jewish life, and crisis response here and around the world is our annual campaign. The annual campaign is why when war broke out in Ukraine, when rockets rained on Israel, when anti-Semitism struck at home, we had the systems in place to respond on multiple fronts and offer hope to our community. Michelle and I have learned invaluable lessons that inspired our strategies to help us remain focused and keep track of our goal to raise more than $21 million in unrestricted. And this year, we will exceed $28 million in total dollars raised through the annual campaign. No two campaign years are the same. Each year presents new, unpredicted challenges. Through it all, our services never end, and as the needs continue to increase, our commitment to raising the millions to respond never waver. During our term, and with all your help, we have closed the campaign up, and on June 30th, and we would be remiss in my last few weeks if we didn't mention that it's not too late to join us in helping make this happen for the third year in a row.
So we planned and then unplanned and planned again as the world evolved around us. We successfully curated meaningful content on Zoom, and then we got out of those Zoom boxes, and here we are. Whether it was at the Shop Back event, a new event positioned to engage women across our community to shop for good and give back while doing it, or at the Women's Philanthropy Day Trip to the Botanical Gardens, walking in Memphis, or touring Dubai as we return to our missions, or most recently at our special night of gratitude, or the next door signature event, the Spring Soiree. When we are together, we are reminded that we are a part of something so much bigger than ourselves. Two areas that are innovating to attract and engage the next generation of leaders is the Business Professional Network, BPN, and Nextdoor. With fantastic lay leaders and professional partners, these two segments have successfully engaged, stewarded, and solicited hundreds of community members in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. Michael and I can see the future, and it looks bright. The recent Nextdoor event, Spring Soiree, which we were allowed to go to, which was really nice to feel young for a minute. It delivered on the growing culture of giving and increased involvement, attracting more than 200 young people, of which 60 were attending their first ever Federation event. At the same time, we are building long-term support from next-gen donors who are leaving legacy commitments through 100 for 100, a centennial initiative.
Okay. Michelle and I were inspired by the trust you each instilled in Federation this year. Do you know that more than 2,000 people, 800 of which were first-time or recovered donors, including UJA donors, Jewish Community Foundation fund holders, and people we did not know, contributed more than $3.6 million to our Ukraine Emergency Fund. When we called to say thank you, we knew Federation would ensure that the dollars would help those who needed it most. This response was an affirmation that you give because you are part of a community with a desire to help in any way you can, and with the recognition that if someday you need help, you know where to turn. We have instilled trust and provide you with peace of mind that Federation will respond. So many of you trust us with your philanthropic investments as well. Through dramatic growth in donor advised fund program and other initiatives, the Jewish Community Foundation became the largest foundation in New Jersey, growing to approximately $800 million in assets under administration. We are so incredibly proud of this outstanding growth. The relationship between UJA annual campaign and the foundation is stronger than ever. This year, the foundation reinstated a gift to the annual campaign, and our perpetual annual campaign endowment has grown, allowing the foundation to contribute $2.8 million for this year's annual campaign. We are so grateful to those inspiring donors who came before us and gave us this solid base to support the campaign. Lastly, and most importantly, we understand and appreciate the impact of your dollars. To sustain this impact, we are amid the fundraising for our centennial campaign, the 100 pin that we were told to wear tonight, so everybody knows it's the campaign. We're celebrating the first 100 years and preparing for the next 100. We are proud to share that we already secured $150 million in total commitments, with the goal of reaching $250 million by our centennial year 2023. This campaign is the largest in our history. Thank you to all those who have already participated, and to all I hope will in the months ahead.
So together, we have seen the best from our community. And as we prepare for this historic moment in our history, we are confident that we can continue to impart the same peace of mind and hope that we have effectively done for so many years. Now, here's the part that everyone knows I love, a little karaoke. As the Beatles sang, "It's getting better all the time." It's only up from here. So we would be remiss if we didn't conclude with one final word of thanks to the campaign and JCF professional teams. Personally, Michael and I feel so fortunate to have navigated the past 2 years with our professional partners, Rebecca, Diane, and Kim, and their teams. They are the backbone of all of the campaign's success. Our community is so fortunate to have the best professionals out there. Together, we make so much good happen. And I also want to thank Michael for leaving the campaign in very good shape as I take it on, and hopefully it continues to grow. So thank you, Michael. So, thank you. Now, please join us in welcoming the 2021-2022 Cone Award honorees, Jeremy Halpern and Ari Wise.
My name is Jeremy Halpern, and I, along with my great friend Ari Wise, are the 2021-2022 Julius and Bessie Cone Young Leadership Award honorees. The Julius and Bessie Cone Young Leadership Award was established by Julius H. Cone in 1956. Each year, the award is presented to 2 individuals who have demonstrated growth and leadership in service to our Federation and the greater Metro West community. The Cone Award honors not only the achievements of these 2 young leaders in our greater Metro West community, but also recognizes their potential for future leadership growth.
Many leaders in this room and on Zoom were recipients of the Cone Award, and we are honored to be amongst them. This year, we have the honor of introducing the 2022-2023 Cone Young Leadership honorees. But before we introduce the new Cone honorees, we wanted to each take a moment to personally reflect upon our leadership journey.
Being involved in Metro West Federation, or Federation in general, because when I was growing up, it was Central, has been incredibly impactful on me. And I spoke about it the other night at the Builders event, the Builders and Allied Trade event. Whether it was the trip we did to the ILR to Moscow and St. Petersburg, and which today seems holds much more meaning than when we realized we were going in for, or the recent trip we took to the UAE to see a real burgeoning of a new Jewish community and the growth of tolerance that is just mind-altering and really difficult to actually describe. Metro West Federation has been there all the way, and you really see what we do in action. I can tell you, being in Moscow and walking up 5 flights of stairs to visit an 85-year-old Holocaust survivor who wouldn't have her food, medicine, healthcare, anything without the money that comes from communities like us, and specifically our community, it makes you really understand the power and the purpose of what we do. And I can't say enough to say thank you for the award. It means a lot to me, but honestly, more important is just knowing that I'm part of such an incredible community, and so proud that we have this federation and just how strong it is.
Leadership to me is about inspiring by example. By rolling up their sleeves and getting to work, a true leader can set an example that will inspire others around them into action. For me, I saw that at an early age, as my family who modeled that behavior within our Jewish community in Cincinnati, Ohio, that made me want to become more involved. I can remember walking into my grandparents' house and seeing my grandfather sitting at the kitchen table on the phone. This struck me as odd because my grandfather did not like to talk on the phone. In fact, I don't know that I ever had a conversation with him on the phone. So when he got done, I asked him about it. And he said, those calls I were making were for Jewish Federation. They weren't for me. The community needed me, and I needed to make those calls. My parents learned from their parents, and they followed suit. They took leadership positions in the community, whether as the president of the local Solomon Schechter or various leadership positions within the Federation. In fact, I remember when my mom was awarded the Cincinnati Federation's version of the Cohen Young Leadership Award. They were inspired by the leadership of their parents, and their actions then inspired me. And now it's our turn. It's our turn to set an example for our kids, to show them the importance of leadership and working in our community. Recently, as we finished dinner, I excused myself to go into my office to get on a Zoom call. And one of my kids asked me, what's this one for tonight? And I said, it's a Mountain Ridge UJA call. To which one of them responded, wow, golf and UJA. It's like all your favorite things at once. It's not hard for those who know me to figure out that golf is one of my favorite things, but it makes me incredibly proud to know that my kids know the UJA is as well.
We are honored to announce this year's the 2022-2023 Cohen Award honorees. John Gentman is a senior vice president at American Express, where he has held a number of leadership positions over his 18-year career. In addition to his accomplishments professionally, John has always prioritized giving back to the communities that he's a part of, following in his family's traditions. This was instilled in him as a child, growing up in a family that was very active in the Philadelphia Jewish community. While living in New York, John served on the board of Soccer for Peace, an Israeli-based organization focused on bridging the gap between Israeli and Palestinian youth, as well as serving on the board of the Pretense, which helped young Jewish entrepreneurs get their start. John is in his second year of JFNA's National Young Leadership Cabinet, has taken on a number of roles within Federation since moving to New Jersey, most notably leading the first virtual Nextdoor Berinsky program. John and his wife Emily are vice chairs for the Centennial Mission to Israel next year and are very much looking forward to being a part of this incredible trip. Additionally, he is actively involved with the Golda Ach Academy, where their children are currently enrolled. Emily and John live in Livingston with their 3 children, Ilana, Jeremy, and Abigail.
Dory Eisenstein has been involved in Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West for the past 10 years. She grew up in Greater Metro West area and returned here in 2008 after living in Chicago and New York City, and re-engaged with Jewish Federation when she was asked to be a participant in the Arthur Berinsky Young Leadership Development Program. Following the lead of her parents, who instilled in her the importance of Jewish leadership and philanthropy, Dory has taken on multiple leadership roles, including co-chairing Berinsky, Ladies Night Out, and the Shop Back, as well as serving on other social action committees. Most recently, Dory was nominated to the Women's Philanthropy Board for 2022 as Vice President of Women's Community Campaign. As a Lion of Judah, Dory wholeheartedly believes the idea of Jewish mutual responsibility and is inspired to help the Jewish community here and abroad. Dory is also a committed volunteer at Congregation Agudath Israel, where she has held multiple positions as well as in her children's schools and NCJW. As co-chair of the North Caldwell's after-school enrichment program, Dory ran programs for many years, raising significant funds to give back to the schools, along with providing an essential and beloved program to the community. With a background in teaching and journalism, Dory is currently working part-time at the Early Childhood Center at Congregation Agudath Israel. Dory lives in North Caldwell with her husband Seth and their 3 children, Isla, Blake, and Noah. We look forward to seeing incredible things from these 2 emerging leaders in our community. Please join us in welcoming Dory and John to the stage to receive their awards.
So mazel tov from me to John and Dory also. You know, leadership has always been one of the hallmarks of our Greater Metro West Federation. Our people here in this community, they step up and they step in. They are philanthropists, they are activists, locally, nationally, and internationally. As a perfect bookend to honoring Dory and John tonight, we have the opportunity to present one of our finest, Toby Goldberger, with the President's Bamberger Award. This award is given by the President of the Federation to an individual for his or her service beyond and above the call of duty. This award is named after Louis Bamberger, a prominent leader and philanthropist in the community at the turn of the 20th century, who was on the original board of the Conference of Jewish Charities in 1923 that eventually became, 100 years later, after many name changes, this Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West New Jersey. You're going to hear a lot about Toby in a couple of minutes, but just to give you an idea about her engaging personality, when I called Toby to inform her that she was selected to achieve this prestigious award, she thanked me and very nicely told me to hurry up because she was making campaign calls and that she had just put someone on hold to take my call. That's Toby. Please welcome to the stage 2 community members who have worked with and learned from Toby for many years, Eric Harbit and Mickey Gottlieb, to present this year's Bamberger Award to Toby Goldberger.
Well, I'm sorry, we went off script, so you'll have to listen. Don't read, please. For Eric and I, Toby Goldberger was UJA, and along with Tom Beck, she was Jewish Family Service of Central Jersey too. We have known Toby really our entire lives, well before we needed reading glasses. Even we had a lot of hair back then. And she was always the pretty lady who would call, stop by, or we'd bump into in synagogue or wherever we were, originally with our parents, to discuss Jewish charitable causes. We came from survivor families, and our parents knew all too well what it was like to be a refugee and what it was like to have a hard time. And Toby showed us a way, and our families a way, how to make the lives of refugees easier. And so our parents were very willing to help. Toby was not only a conduit for our parents, but for the entire Builder refugee community. These Greeners, as they were affectionately known, came to Central Jersey and thrived after World War II. She introduced them to incredible programs that UJA and JFS created and showed them how they could give back. They were ready to do so because they understood life could be derailed no matter what your capabilities or what your intentions. I can't really imagine how much money Toby has raised in all these years. It is a staggering sum. And to think about the impact that money has had for communities, not only here, but around the world. She can really be proud of how many vulnerable seniors she has helped. Refugees find their way in a new land, children who have food on their table and educational programs to attend to. Her impact has really been enormous.
We've all had that feeling when your phone rings and you see it's Toby on the caller ID. Uh-oh, what's she fundraising for now? But Toby has a special charm. She is pleasantly persistent. So it's not much of a question if you were going to give, it was only a matter of how much you were going to give. The real secret to her success was that she always was passionate about causes she was calling about. She genuinely cared about you and your family. She's more than a volunteer, she's a friend. Toby has held many leadership roles in Central New Jersey, Jewish Federation, JFS, JCC. She has served on numerous executive committees and boards, including the Executive Committee at Jewish Federation of Central New Jersey. She chaired the legacy fundraising for her congregation, Temple Emmanuel of Westfield. She chairs the JFS Central Annual Fundraising Campaign and Gala for about 40 years, 29 years, I'm sorry, 16. Toby was a board member for JDC for 20 years. She has a strong presence as a leader within women's philanthropy, participating in many women's events over the many years and encouraging others to join her. We are honored to present our friend Toby with the President's Bamberger Award. I can't think of anyone who is more deserving of this recognition. Please join us in welcoming Toby Goldberger to the stage.
Eric, Nikki, thank you for your kind words, and I am touched by them, believe me. You do, both of you do so much for our community. Your dedication is an example for all of us to follow. I am so honored to receive the Louis Bamberger Award, but I feel it is I who should be thanking you for a lifetime, an opportunity to serve our federation and all it does for all of us to help so many people. In my roles with all of the federated agencies, I have been fortunate to be the representative to Jewish communities all over the world and here in Greater Metro West. I met with the remnants of Jewish communities in Poland, Cuba, Hungary, and India, and heard their stories firsthand about how our funds have helped them survive through great difficulties. As I have attended many spirited Shabbat programs at the JCC classes and summer camps, I remember being in Morocco when the Jewish day schools there were mostly closing, never to reopen again. When I see the lines of people waiting for food at our Jewish family service, I am reminded of my trips to the former Soviet Union, bringing matzah, kosher food, and medicine to our fellow Jews who were being persecuted for just being Jewish. I am most proud of our work in resettling over 1,000 Russian refugees in the late 80s and early 90s. I am also proud of our Federation's role in quickly raising funds to help the Ukrainians in this time of crisis and preparing our community to resettle them locally if needed. I wish to acknowledge my late husband, Larry, who served as Federation campaign chair and introduced me to the wonderful world of Jewish communal leadership. I stand here this evening proud of my children and grandchildren, Stacy, Massimo, Francesca, Luca, Glenn, Mindy, Lee and James, my new granddaughter, another Lee, James's friend Nikki, my two nieces who are here this evening, Lori Moore and Linda Weisbrod, who share my passion for communal activities and who have supported me on this wonderful journey. This has been the adventure of a lifetime, and I encourage each and every one of you to join me on this path. Thank you again for this award. I am really grateful.
Yeah. Please join me in another round of warm applause for Toby. My dear friends, our building was not open to you for a very long time, but as you know, federations never close. This building alone cannot contain the work, the energy, the values of an entire community. Throughout this past year, we showed the very best of us, supporting the reopening of synagogues and agencies during the waves of the pandemic, reaching out to help those battered by hurricanes and floods, by invasions and catastrophes. When fires raged near Jerusalem, when Hurricane Ida devastated Elizabeth and New Orleans, when the Champlain Towers South collapsed in Surfside, Miami, we supported our friends and partners and provided financial assistance, chaplaincy, support, crisis counseling, and social services. We raised funds. We sent help. I can't begin to explain to you how proud, awed, and grateful I am to serve in an organization that steps up so fast, so willingly to serve our neighbors and our community. One which allocates funds and welcomes new neighbors like Afghan refugees as well this year. We sent solidarity and leadership missions to Israel in the wake of rockets fired from Gaza onto our friends and families in the South, and to deepen our partnerships and see our impact. We took rabbis, community leaders, and federation leaders to hug our friends and remind them that we stand together. With our awesome Shlichim and Rishonim, we deepened our living bridge between New Jersey and Israel. We worked with local institutions, government agencies, universities, and interfaith allies to stand firm against anti-Semitism, hate, and bigotry. With rabbis and clergy to coordinate and promote communal discourse and civic dialogue. We cared for those in need, and we built up our community even further. Grants to 46 community synagogues to help their in-person High Holy Day reopening, from tents and rentals to additional security and new technology needs. We made sure that our synagogues could be more comfortable in providing a healthy and safe environment for the High Holy Days. After the January the 15th attack on Congregation Beth Israel in Colleyville, we raised funds for more security, because sometimes we have to explain to people that in our houses of worship and social service buildings, there are panic buttons and armed guards and police patrols and active shooter training and stop the bleed training and more. So now we have 3 security professionals who advise, train, write grants, and help protect our buildings, our synagogues, and our agencies. And we connect newcomers, veteran residents, people who've previously felt disengaged or marginalized. Over 250 parents at virtual parent meet and greets, 1,000 people at the post-Colleyville community prayer service, next door ambassadors reaching out to our incoming 30 and 40-year-olds. As the only federation in New Jersey that has an entire department dedicated to Holocaust education, we've been racing against time to ensure that the stories of the Shoah will be told after there are no survivors left to tell them. This year, we launched a 3G initiative for grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, in which we train residents to tell the stories of their grandparents. They are speaking in schools and synagogues and ensuring that Never Forget will continue for generations to come. And then Ukraine happened. Once again, we saw the essence of our mission. You don't build the firehouse on the day that the fire breaks out. You build it up over years, decades of investment, effort, relationships, caring, dedication, service. We built this because Federation was built for this. We raised millions of dollars to get Jews and non-Jews out of harm's way, to bring thousands from Ukraine, from Russia, from Belarus, to bring food and medicine and shelter and clothing and trauma care to tens of thousands of those who needed us. Time and again, since the Russian invasion, I've seen the best and worst of humanity. David and I were at the Polish-Ukrainian border. We held hands with refugee women and children, seeing the trauma and shock and desolation of total loss and destruction. Seeing the refugees that we help, Jewish and non-Jewish, with food and medicine and trauma care and shelter and so much more, is a testament to the trauma of the refugees and the importance of our work. That's why it's been so inspiring to have seen how our partners, our professionals, our volunteers stood up to make the difference. Our own board of directors immediately withdrew $500,000 from our emergency reserves to send to medical and humanitarian relief on the Ukrainian border without hesitation. That's the key phrase for me, without hesitation. Volunteers and kits and packages and donations and time. Even as we emerged from COVID, our chaplains used hybrid models of Zoom and in-person visits to provide comfort to Holocaust survivors and homebound elderly. Dozens of bigs connected to littles through Newark's Big Brothers Big Sisters program, because this is a Jewish federation that continually leads and inspires the national American Jewish community. Our own wonderful Mark Wilf, who is joining us by Zoom, is finishing his term as chair of the board of the National Jewish Federations of North America. Leaders from across our country sit in the boards of the Jewish Agency for Israel and the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. They sit on synagogue boards and agency boards, on programs and platforms that lift up and inspire our community. 9 of our next generation leaders sit on the National Young Leadership Cabinet. I have met them. They are, in one word, awesome, and in 2 words, really awesome. That's what this community is, and now we have proof. We released the first community study in over 20 years. After a dozen information sessions for over 100 community leaders, we set up task forces to explore the key findings from the community study. We're learning how to best meet the needs of our diverse and geographically dispersed Jewish community, how to address poverty and financial struggle, how to welcome, to value, and to include. Again and again, this past year, we've been tested. Each time we responded to the crisis at hand, in Israel, in Ukraine, in Jersey, wherever and whatever it was, with efficiency, compassion, and a true sense of community. Despite our planning, the road ahead was always unpredictable. That's a lesson in humility, but it's also a lesson in community. Because no matter how difficult it's been for each of us, as friends, colleagues, volunteers, professionals, we know that others have suffered too. And that gave us a unique opportunity to make a difference in the lives of so many. From David, from me, from all our leadership, from our professionals, our donors, and our volunteers. Thank you. While tonight is a celebration of what we have accomplished this past year, we do have some business that we need to attend to. Please join me in welcoming Chair of the Board Governance Committee, Jody Hurwitz-Kaplan.
Thank you, Dov, for giving us all a look back over this past year. I am so proud to participate firsthand in the incredible work the Federation does in and for our community. On the screens behind me, you'll see a list of members nominated to serve on the 2023 Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West Board of Trustees. On behalf of the Federation, I'd like to congratulate all of these individuals on their nomination. As we have not received any additional nominations, I'd like to call upon Deb Ben-Shimon, Assistant Secretary, to cast one vote for the slate.
I cast my one vote for the slate of nominees for the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West for the 2022-2023 fiscal year.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is approved, so thank you very much. Would all our newly elected members please rise and be recognized? We are thankful for all that you have done to earn these positions and look forward to your growing involvement in council as a member of the Board of Trustees. On behalf of the board, I'd like to extend a special thanks to Amy Balloon, Stacy Brown, and Alejandra Castano for their work on the governance committee all year. An additional thank you to those members who are rotating off our board. Please stand and be recognized and accept our gratitude for your service, your commitment, and your leadership to our Federation. I'd also like to thank the Board Governance Committee for their fine work in organizing the process for tonight's Federation. Tonight, I am fortunate to hold an additional role, and that is I also serve as the nominating chair for Women's Philanthropy. And in that capacity, I would like to thank the members of the nominating committee for their time and effort in selecting the Women's Philanthropy Board for 2022-2023. I'd also like to acknowledge our professionals, Diane Bask and Sophia Yosevich, for their time and effort in selecting the Women's Philanthropy Board for 2022-2023. I'd like to thank those trustees who are leaving office, as well as those who continue to serve as lifetime members and those who serve as board members of National Women's Philanthropy. On the screen behind me is a list of members in these categories. They do not require a vote at this time. We thank you all for your commitment. For women who will serve as new and continuing trustees, please stand and remain standing. Oh, I know you're here. Please. I now call upon Sherry Broder to cast one vote in favor of the slate.
I, Shari Broder, Vice President, cast a vote in favor of the 2022-2023 slate of officers and trustees.
Thank you, Sherry. I'm now going to ask members of the Women's Philanthropy Board to vote by show of hands. All in favor of accepting this? Okay. Any opposed? Terrific. Well, today we have bestowed upon these nominees the honor of leading our women's philanthropy as a board member. Each of you have demonstrated devotion and dedication and is most deserving of this honor. You also know that with this honor comes responsibility. We have no doubt that you will carry out your responsibilities with care, sensitivity, and with an awareness of the trust we as a community place on you. Best wishes for a successful term in office. Congratulations. I'd like to welcome current Women's Philanthropy President Michelle Landau and incoming President Deb Jacob to the stage, where an official transfer of the gavel will take place.
You have no idea how hard it is to remember not to lose this in 2 years. But it's an honor, a true honor to be passing this gavel. It is with great confidence that I pass the gavel to our new Women's Philanthropy President, Deborah Jacob. Deb is the best. She is so thoughtful, so motivated. She will cry with anyone in this room in a heartfelt way. She is capable, hardworking, and committed to raising the dollars our partner agencies will need and rely on. We are really looking forward to great things ahead. Thank you. All right.
Okay, we're in the home stretch. So for me, Mazel Tov to all the new members of both the Federation Board of Trustees and the Women's Philanthropy Board. Very excited for this new leadership group to take us through the next 12 months. And again, as was repeated, for those board members who are rotating off the Federation Board in the next 36 days, thank you so much for your service these last couple of years. Your contributions and dedication have been invaluable to the Federation and to our broader Greater Metro West community. My heartfelt thanks to our Federation's talented, passionate, and committed professional staff led by our CEO, Doug Ben-Shimon. You make it happen every day, each and every one of you. Thank you. And thank you to our Jewish Community Foundation, their president and my dear friend and colleague, Steve Levy, along with their incredible professional staff led by their executive director, Kim Hirsch. You've heard it before tonight. Our Jewish Community Foundation is the largest foundation of any kind in the state of New Jersey. I also want to thank the rabbis, the beneficiary agencies, and their executive directors, presidents, boards of trustees, professional staffs, and volunteers. We are all part of the mosaic that is Greater Metro West. There is really a lot I could say about a number of individuals this evening, but for the sake of time, actually your time, I'm going to limit my remarks to a few leaders who are ending their respective terms this year on the Federation's Executive Committee. A special thank you to Jody Hurwitz Kaplan for her outstanding work as Board Governance Chair. I asked Jody to tackle a couple of really important tasks these last 2 years, and she rose to the occasion and created a governance structure that is appropriate for a federation of our size and stature. So thank you, Jody. So Peter Langerman, thank you for your longtime service as our investment committee chair. The management of our foundation's assets has been in your capable hands these last 10 years, and we are in good place because of your stewardship. To David Hyman, for his outstanding work as our budget and finance chair during these last 2 challenging years, along with his invaluable work on special projects. And Joan Levinson as our secretary. Joan, I know how crazy this year has been for you, and I sincerely appreciate your dedication to the Federation and this community. Now, I'd also like to thank what I refer to as our M3. Michael Goldberg, UJA campaign chair, Michelle Landau, our Women's Philanthropy president, for their dedication and under whose leadership we were able to reach unprecedented levels of philanthropy from our Greater Metro West community for not only our annual UJA campaign and supplemental campaigns, but also for COVID-19 emergency relief and most recently, our Ukraine Emergency Fund. And lastly, to the third M, Mark Wilf, for his stewardship of the Jewish Federations of North America these past 2 years, for being a pillar of our Greater Metro West community, and for being a true match. Frequently in life, timing is everything. And I and our Greater Metro West community have had the good fortune to have had these 3 leaders' volunteer terms coincide with the challenges that COVID-19 presented, not only to our community, but to the world. You are all sincerely appreciated by me, by everyone in this room, and by our entire community. Lastly, I'd like to take a brief moment to acknowledge another great Metro West leader who will be stepping down soon. Please join me in saying Litraot and Toda Rabbah to Amir Shacham, our Associate Executive Vice President, Global Connections, who has had an indelible impact on our global family for over the past 25 years. For those of you who don't know, Amir is the R word, is retiring. And we will be holding multiple in-person events here in Metro West this fall to honor Amir appropriately. So, looking forward, there are 2 major initiatives that will dominate our operational strategies for the next 12 months and beyond. The community study, as Doug mentioned, and the related recommendations of the task forces, and the celebration of our centennial year. As hopefully you all know by now, 2023 is our 100th anniversary for our Federation, and it's going to be epic. That means that fiscal 2023 will be a year of epic planning, Our Centennial Working Committees under the leadership of Jane Wilf, who I know is on Zoom today, along with our professional teams of the JCF and our Federation, are hard at work planning a spectacular year of celebratory events and programs with our partners that will touch every corner of our community. The festivities will begin with our Centennial Mission in July of 2023. Please check it out.
Hey, Greater Metro West Federation, you look good for 100. We should celebrate. What are you doing in July 2023? Centennial Mission, be there.
Greater Metro West missions bring Israel to life in an extremely special way. We will be part of events and celebrations that will bring Israel to life and make memories to last a lifetime.
You'll savor Israel's rich cuisine and culture and be able to explore your own interests too.
Visiting Israel is an incredible experience. Visiting Israel with a few hundred of your closest friends, that's an experience of a lifetime.
My first trip to Israel was in 2018 on the community mission. It was a life-changing experience and I can't wait to go back.
Join us for the Centennial Mission. It is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see Israel through a whole new set of eyes.
We can't wait to be there with our synagogue, with our school community, and with our Greater Metro West Federation family.
There's so many things that I love about Israel. Just being there, you feel alive. Please come on the Centennial Mission with us and experience Israel for yourself.
It's a chance to really be part of history.
Join us on this once-in-a-century opportunity to help celebrate Greater Metro West Federation's 100 years and the 75th anniversary of the State of Israel.
This mission will be meaningful, uplifting, inspiring, and incredible. Our Jewish Federation Centennial Mission is going to be the best thing you do in 2023.
Wow. Clearly, you're all going to want to get ready to join us in what we promise will be a mission that is once in a century going to happen. There's lots of information that will be about the mission available when we go outside after the meeting portion and on our website. Registration opens next week. It's June already. I can't believe it. So in addition to the community engagement plans for the Centennial, our campaign and foundation teams are underway with, as you heard before from Michael, the largest campaign in our community's history with the goal of $250 million. That's with the capital B. And as you heard from Michael, we are more than halfway there. As was mentioned during their report also, we are focusing on enhancing our community today through targeted supplemental giving, in addition to growing our endowments for tomorrow. This will secure the future of not only our annual UJA campaign, but also vital programs for our agencies and synagogues, for our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. But we're not just planning for our financial future. While we do plan to celebrate and acknowledge all the achievements of our first 100 years, we're eager to make the necessary adjustments that will enable us to embrace the next 100 years. As Dov described, we learned a lot about our community this past year, about our strength, our resolve, our compassion, our generosity, particularly during times of crisis. We also learned a lot about the composition of our community itself. And thanks to the valuable data that we gathered through our community study, we have a much better picture of what our community looks like, how it's evolving, and what we need to do to respond to its changing needs. We've created 5 task forces, as you've heard, whose recommendations will be presented at the end of June. We are eager to spend the coming year putting the work into addressing the priorities that have been identified, take all this newfound knowledge and use it to chart a roadmap for the months and even years ahead. In addition to creating strategies to bring in new donors to our fundraising efforts, we are committed to becoming a more welcoming and inclusive community to addressing issues related to poverty and hunger, and identifying the future physical footprint of our federation in order to best meet our community members where they are. I am confident that this roadmap will ensure our federation's next 100 years will be off to a strong start. At next year's annual meeting, we'll be able to look back and see how we've done. These are truly exciting times for our federation and our greater Metro West community. And speaking about something exciting, one of the Federation initiatives that instills in me the greatest hope for the future of our global Jewish community is our beloved Mishlachat program. Each year, we bring a cohort of dedicated young Israelis here to serve in our greater Metro West community in order to deepen the connection between greater Metro West and Israel. This incredible program helps our future generations build meaningful connections to Israel and vice versa. Next month, in a separate bittersweet ceremony, we will be saying goodbye in Lihitraot to our current cohort of Rishonim. But tonight, they are here with us. And before we conclude the meeting portion of the evening, I'm excited to have them lead us in the singing of Hatikva. After they've finished, we're all going to go outside and head for dessert and music and dancing. So please rise and welcome our Rishonim. Thank you very much for attending in person and on Zoom tonight. This concludes the meeting portion of tonight's festivities. Please join us, for those of you who are here, outside in the tent in the parking lot for dessert, music, and dancing and hugging. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Please exit through the door in the front left of the room to our tent for dessert and celebration.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים,
Please join us outside for dessert and celebration. Thank you. Israeli music and dancing is awaiting us.